So despite having a roster stacked with an insane amount of talent, Liquid are actually one of the worst Dust2 teams in the entire top 20. In fact, when you look at their individuals, NAF, Ultimate, and JKS, and Yukindar when he was with them, were all below 1.0 rating on the map. Twist was at 1.01, and Nertz is at 1.05, I believe, in the few maps of Dust2 he's played with the team. And it really doesn't make all that much sense, to be honest, because if you watched my Yukindar, or my Donk video, where I talked about Donk being the best Dust2 player of all time, well, all the reasons that Donk should be good on Dust2 are the reasons that Liquid should be good on Dust2. It's not really making all that much sense, especially when you compare them to a team like Heroic, who just got put together. They're not, I mean, they have some firepower. Senpaius is great. Tanir is great, right? They have firepower, but you can't really argue that they have firepower that should be able to compete with Liquid. And obviously Dust2, there's more to it than just firepower, but firepower is a pretty damn good start. And then the second step is you're playing a team that's new, right? I mean, obviously, you added Nertz to the roster, so Liquid isn't, you know, the same roster as it was for a while. But, I mean, it's 4 or 5 players. Dust2 is a map where you don't need the level of coordination, where you need 5 players that all played together for years to play really well. And I just wanted to take a look at what the hell is going on. What actually happened in this series against Heroic. Now, they won the pistol round, probably not going so well in the second round. I mean, they reasonably should have got at least a couple of kills out of Naf and Nertz before they got taken down. I mean, they were fairly close to Twist. I mean, if Twist died, they just lose the round straight up. And it's not even a force from Heroic. It's actually just like Glocks and some upgraded pistols. And not only that, they end up giving up the bomb. Now, Tanir has a potential flank. His shadow's visible, but nobody's going to be looking in that direction to see the shadow. And he's actually going to play it completely safe. Now, his players on the other side are trying to delay as much as possible, so he has time to drop down, which is exactly what happens. Really well played by Heroic. And then JKS gets spammed through the door. You hate to see it. You hate to see it. But I mean, look, you have to give credit to the other side. Heroic played that round quite well, but at the same time, I don't think they ever should have been in a situation where they should have been in a 3v3 to begin with. They shouldn't have been in a 5v3. And looking back at how this happened, I mean, Nertz is playing close mid with an MP7. I would prefer it to be an MP9, to be honest. Naf is going to pivot over and try and make contact. I guess Senpaius does hit a nice shot on him here, but Nertz just kind of has to get more than one, or he has to have support so that he can actually fight in mid. The point of this strat, obviously, is Naf is going to fight in mid with Nertz, and they're going to fight off of short as well, and that's going to make this all work effectively. But it ends up being that Ultimate falls back, Twist falls back as well, and Naf ends up dying. So they actually don't have this collapse in mid the same way they want to. Now, I'm not sure the protocol around why they fell back off of mid, but I don't know. There just has to be a way to prevent this from happening somehow. And I understand the idea of why they fell back here. They're worried about that scout coming in through B, and it does make it actually really uncomfortable afterwards. So I can see how they lose from here. It's just... And that ends up putting them onto a force buy for round 3. They have upgraded pistols. I mean, this is a much better buy than Heroic had, and they'll go for the fast collapse onto tunnels. Now, Heroic on the other side, at the same time, they take pit control, which is, I mean... Look, they're not winning the round off of this, but this is exactly, I mean, if you're Heroic and your opponents go for a tons collapse, I mean, either you want to kill them all in tunnels, or more reasonably, you want to be out long so that when they take that tons control, you have full control and you know exactly what's going on. So they have a pretty good idea of what Liquid are going for. Liquid don't have a nade for the smoke, so they kind of just have to gamble here and hope that they can get something done. And there is a boost for Nertz, but I mean, this is upgraded pistols, right? If your opponents play well, they're supposed to take you down the majority of the time. And Heroic just hit some relatively decent shots. Twist has a chance, but... Ooh, okay. Ultimate. 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 Oh my god. This is the type of... How are they a bad Dust2 team when they've got players that can do this? And when I say Liquid are a bad Dust2 team, I mean they are a bad Dust2 team. They've got like 3 and 8, like a 30% pistol round win rate. They're below 50% win rate on either side from rounds 1. And to be fair, I mean, this obviously depends a decent amount on the teams you're playing, the level they're playing at. You know, there are a lot of factors that go into having a Dust2 that percentage-wise is not very good. But I mean, just visibly, I don't think the Dust2 for Liquid is good either, right? Even if you don't want to be like a stats cell, as they call them. Even if you want to just look at the gameplay, I feel like they just don't look very comfortable on Dust2. One of the surprises is that Ultimate has like a 0.8 rating on Dust2 because Dust2 is kind of like an Opera's paradise, especially on the CT side. But we'll look into that specifically as we go on. Ultimate, pretty good position here. Tough to see through the molly, but he lines himself up well. Now, what you would love to see is if Twist set a flash to flash behind, but understandably, they don't have a ton of money. They don't have those flashes left over. So Ultimate just has to go for the straight up duel. He gets one and dies. That's totally fine. You can play Retake in these types of situations. It's not the end of the world. With long control, so basically if you have short control or long control, it's totally reasonable to play Retake. It helps if you have a bit of utility though. I mean, they have zero utility to work with. So they're actually just fighting up through elevator with disadvantageous fights that aren't like unwinnable. All it really takes is like a molly towards short, or a flash behind Ultimate on ramp as well, to change from you know kind of like 50-50 or like 45-55 gunfights where you have to kind of outplay your teammates, to actually making it a little easier on yourself where you have slightly less angles you have to be worried about. But even with that utility, you're going to lose sometimes regardless. So yet again, Liquid go for the fast tunnels control. On the other side, Heroic go out long again. So you end up just having long control for Heroic and kind of mediocre tons control for Liquid because they take tons control. But if you remember the previous round, Liquid took tons control and they full stacked A, and Liquid walked into the full stack. So this time around, Liquid take tons control, Heroic have the player in pit, and this is why having the player in pit is important because he can control this long area, and he can also do something like smoke off cross if he wants to draw, you know, throw a bit of a fake and make his opponents kind of worried about it, while the rest of his team can easily be moving their way back over towards B tunnels. Now, Nurse has a smoke, which I think is clutch here. Without a smoke, this would be pretty bad. And then this is honestly a pretty clutch play from Nav because he gets into lower. He's going to call JKS over because he knows that they could be pivoting into lower. Gets the first kill. Youngstar just needs to be ready to get the trade there, but JKS also picks up one to help out. So that's just honestly a really good play. And I mean, it's kind of weird. They're winning these forces in pretty convincing fashion and with smart play. I mean, it's Liquid, right? They're like a top 10 team. It's not going to be too easy to point out really terrible, obviously dumb plays they make. Rather, oftentimes it'll just be kind of situations that they might get into that just they need to not be getting into, right? Sometimes there are situations in CS where it can be like every decision that you made along the way can be justifiable, but one of them had to change because you simply can't justify getting to the end point that you're at. I feel like that happens a decent amount in Pro CS, but Nerds goes for the play into lower. This is relatively standard. Yikindar went for this all the time, and this is something that I think actually worked out for them relatively well. You have the player in lower plus a player on short. You're double controlling lower. You make it very hard for your opponents to get mid control, and you just waste their time. You get some kills sometimes as well. On the other end, Naf does end up dying to Youngster here. He just goes for the play, tries to cross dry. That's risky. So the problem with the play from Naf there is, look, it is risky, and he's completely alone on B, which means it's not necessarily the type of risk you want to be taking. And not only that, he's fighting against like a force buy, which means, you know, a force buy isn't necessarily the type of round you want to be taking tons of risks against. Now, one of the ways he could fight against that is potentially the problem is he only had one smoke. I feel like if he had a smoke drop to him or something, maybe there's a way around that, because I understand the impulse there is tons is clear. I've spotted it out. Nobody's there. I can get the back plat. I can get a pretty advantageous fight, especially against pistols if they try and peek into me. And if I throw my smoke now, then I'm not going to have that smoke later if they throw something like a lurk smoke and they want to try and pop out B, because sometimes teams will do that, right? They'll wait for your smoke pops, and then they line up behind it, they molly back plat, and they pop out into B, and maybe he's trying to avoid that type of play. But the reality is they were going for a play in middle. Naf ends up dying on the side for whatever reason, justifiable or not, and that ends up directly leading to them losing the round, because they end up in a 3v3, but B site's completely clear. And actually, they might not lose the round here as they go for the retake. You end up having Youngster stuck in closet, and JKS just gets the kill. So this is these are the types of rounds that define why Liquid should not have a bad Dust2, right? They can be in a tough situation, a 3v3 B site retake, where your opponents even, I think they had a door smoke as well, and you can still win those. How bad are the setups you're getting yourself into, the situations you're allowing yourself to get into, where you lose so much on T2? So now you have an actual eco from Heroic, which should, in theory, just be a free win. You have the crossfire in middle from Twist and Ultimate. Twist gets insta-dinked by Youngster, but, I mean, it's a Glock, so we can still pull it back pretty comfortably. And, I mean, you can give up all the cat control you want against, against pistols. They're not... I mean, they can go for an exec up short. You can even give up a bomb plant at some points. It's not the end of the world if that's actually going to happen. But you just, don't lose. And try and survive with it. I think the key is to survive with as many players as possible, even more so than it is to prevent the bomb plant, because the money you lose when you have a player die, I think, one player dying is kind of over 3,000, isn't it? That's like the same amount that the T's make from a bomb plant. But either way, clean anti-eco. I was going to say cleanup on the anti-eco. Then you have the gun rounds, and I mean, Liquid lose this game, right? So there's going to have to be some rounds that get lost along the way. You have a fast lower play from Heroic coming out, and Sunpius is ready for this fast boost. Now, one of the things that I think Ultimate was doing at certain points, especially when he first got picked up to Liquid, was just forcing the same aggressive plays a little too often. And so you could do plays like this from Sunpius, and they would over-deliver because Ultimate would often be in the same spot too often. Now, in this case, I think Ultimate has slowed it down a little bit since the player break, which I like to see. I think it makes it a little bit harder to tell where he's going to be, what he's going to do, and harder to counter. Nerds gets flashed into tunnels just to get some information, which I think is great because they're tracking where Heroic is on the map, right? So they know Heroic is aggressive, they're taking short control, and that's a great time to go for this type of flash play. And then you have Nerds jiggling with a smoke out, which I think in Pugs as well, one of the most effective plays you can be doing. I mean, it's just insanely effective. You want to do this a decent amount of the time because then when your opponents come back late round for a B, like a contact B, well, if you don't have a smoke, it can be kind of hard to deal with because they can walk all the way up to here, make contact with you, for example. If you're here, they can just make instant contact with you and then bust out. And you either have a player here that can help support with a flash, or if they're not there, it's really easy to die and just lose the round immediately. So you have this, sometimes you have this like jiggle with a smoke play, and that means if they go back for that contact, you can delay for your teammates, and it makes it very hard for the T's to have like really good ideas of what strats to be running. Then you have JKS in towards the box. I mean, he's with Ultimate, but they're heavily focused on middle here with two players in CT, so JKS doesn't really have any support. And once JKS dies, Ultimate is in a tough spot because he's probably, I was going to say, I feel like he just has to give up A here, or he can go for this fight here, but then he ends up being in the middle of the open. And you can see Liquid's idea here, actually. I like the idea to some extent. I mean, they have two players CT, player dies long, so they immediately pivot over to doubling up on elevator to make sure that Ultimate can win the fight he's having. But it looks like Naf just isn't quite ready for the exact... If Naf jumps up here immediately and pulls his gun out, then I think they're good. Or if he even comes up here and pulls his gun out. But because Naf ends up having his molly out, it's really just Twist trying to hold this smoke alone. And maybe Twist gets two a good amount of the time, but the smoke isn't thrown perfectly either. And Twist is also trying to create space behind him. I think Twist is trying to jump up so that Naf can get up behind him, or so that he's like not kind of on top of Naf where they have nowhere to run. Like three players in elevator, it's easy to get kind of clustered. A couple of flashes pop and then all three of you die. But Naf having his nade out here basically leads to Ultimate dying, and then Naf dies as well. So I think, I mean, obviously, optimally, JKS just doesn't die. That would be like step one. But the reality is I think they were in a reasonable way to pivot out of JKS dying if Naf just has his gun out. I feel like I'm more of a fan of the standard triple A where you have, you have Naf on B side of mid and you have Twist kind of in Ultimate's position and Ultimate is towards car, and then they can actually support, and JKS isn't on such an island on long. I feel like I'm more of a fan of that, but you can toss it up. I mean, that play isn't completely unreasonable, but it just seems like they were on slightly different pages, it feels like, as to how they should play that out, because Twist continued forward after he got the initial kill, right? Like, he didn't just get the kill and then get traded. I think he continued forward, and in doing so ended up getting traded. Anyways, going for long control, Do they throw the smoke? They don't throw the smoke. Nerds doesn't throw the molly. They don't throw the smoke. They don't throw the molly. Nerds is just going to flash over. Here's the op shot. And backs up. Okay. Is this one of those ones where they just... okay, someone did throw the smoke? Oh, that's a T smoke, right? The T's through the smoke. Oh, does Nerds hear that? Yeah, Nerds hears it. Okay, I think that's what happened. Nerds hears that smoke, because you can hear it bloom before getting into the corner. Decides to bail, which is okay. But I'm not sure what the best play here is, to be honest. Because you have 2 on short, which means giving up long is a little... I mean, it's fine, but it's a little awkward, because you obviously wanted to double up control. That's why they went too long. They kind of have to bail out of what was clearly like plan A that they were going for. But they do have mid control from ultimate. They do have, you know, the mid push coming out of Nerds and Twist, so they get a lot of information. And at this point, it seems like very likely that Heroic is making their way up long. So JKS is in a good position to be able to prevent that. He should be able to nade out this smoke as well if he wants. Ultimate tosses the smoke down, the lurk smoke down, which I think is really effective. Was there 2 smokes here? I'm not sure why he naded ramp instead of nading this smoke. I mean, maybe JKS was just worried about... I mean, he was just trying to buy time so he could jump up onto the ledge, but usually you expect the nade on the ramp, and Twist and JKS would be able to fight. But maybe the problem there is that if they're fighting a 2v3, and they know that there's likely an opper. Because of how the round played out, it's almost certain that there was an opper. Did the op shoot? I think the op actually shot, so they probably know there's an opper, so if you nade out that smoke, the opper could be posted on you. So it somewhat makes sense the way that played out. Then you end up in about a 3v4. What actually happens in this 3v4? Because you're initially going to have Nerds as the first player to die. Where's Nerds? Here's Nerds. Nerds just wants to get out. You've got a delayed flank from Naf. So Naf knows that, like, the problem is if Naf activates on the flank now, there could easily be someone watching him. And if someone's watching him and he dies, then they can go back and focus on the other side, and it becomes quite awkward. However, I think they have information. This might be... Don't they have information that all 3 players are here? Sunpias just shot, right? Didn't Sunpias just shoot? And then you have 2 players on plat that you can see? Maybe not. See this again. Nerds ends up dying. I mean, Nerds ends up trying to push out. They're a little, I mean, it's tough when you're this disconnected. I mean, you're playing together, but at the same time, you have an op and a rifle on short. It's hard for them to link up. You have a player towards elevator, but elevator smoked off, so it's also hard for them to link up. And you have a player long, which, you know, there's lots of failure points in this type of retake. Honestly, Ultimate just gets absolutely dookied on by XFloud. And to some extent, I mean, you just have Heroic hit some nice shots, and Pius is in a really nice position looking over that smoke to be able to catch Nerds. But I wish they were a little more compact in the way they went for that retake. Because having 1 player elevator, 2 players on short, 1 player long in a 4v3, I mean, that's good, but I feel like you more so want to be attacking from 2 positions instead of 1, or instead of 3. Because if you go like 3 up short and 1 flank or something like that, or is it better 3 up short 1 flank, or like 2 up elevator 1 short 1 flank? I feel like that would also be better. I don't know, it just feels like it's probably reasonable. I mean, sometimes rounds just kind of go wrong like that. I will say one of the notes I feel like I'm noticing is that they don't have much utility late in the round. And obviously you're not generally going to have tons of utility late in the round. You know, you're going to use your utility early in the round more often than not to try and make sure that you... I mean, because late round scenario, it's like having a kit. It's like, yeah, the 1 in 100 rounds where your kit would have won you the round, it really sucks. But the question is, would you have even been in a position for that kit to have made the difference in winning and losing the round if you didn't spend money on something else, right? Like maybe the smoke you threw that you bought instead of a kit, if you didn't have that, you would have just lost the round earlier, right? So it's a little complicated from that regard, but a couple of these times, it feels like if they had 1 flash or 1 smoke, flashes are a little easier, I think, to find a way to keep. If they had like 1 extra flash, they would end up being, you know, they would end up being in a much better position to retake or to hold the site. Anyways, Fast play out B by LNZ actually beats the utility. This is a nice little play from LNZ. He actually beats the utility, and Liquid is playing kind of outside of the site a lot of the time. So he actually gets into a really nice position. The problem is Naf is the one on the other side, and Naf is one of the more underrated anchors out there, in my opinion. No bias, obviously. No bias at all. Picks up a nice kill, but he actually, this is a really nice play from Hero. He actually draws the attention enough, even with dying, that Ultimate is just kind of just a little, you know, he's looking for players that are here, but these players actually made their way out middle. It's actually a really clever little play from Heroic. I actually really like this one that completely caught them off guard and ended up getting Heroic into a 4v4. And I mean, if LNZ didn't die, or if he got a kill, but even if he just didn't die, they'd be in a really, really good position to take down this round. But still, they get the one. Then Sun Pius peeks into CT. I mean, Sun Pius peeking into CT on a rifler in deep CT. Online, he probably gets that kill most of the time. But I mean, I don't feel like that's an unbelievably bad fight, right? I feel like he's going to win that fight a reasonable amount of the time, to the point where I don't feel like that's a crazy bad fight. Nertz is just had to rotate over to try and support, and he hit the shot. I mean, you just have to respect that. You know, he's got to hit that shot sometimes. And then you end up with xFloud in a 1v4. And he's, I mean, I've heard of an xFloud 1v4 from today, in fact. But is he going to pull those off that often? Probably not. You have the pivot from Liquid into the 2-1-2. You know, obviously you want to run some 3-1-1, some 2-1-2, so you have heavy B presence once in a while. Especially, I like the play with, you know, the best op spawn going for an aggressive play towards B, although that feels like it's getting kind of like very, very common at this point, to the point where teams are kind of ready and able to deal with that to some extent, but whatever. They go for the recontesting towards mid. So Liquid are just like recontesting mid very consistently, but they just seem like they're losing duels when they recontest mid very often. I mean, Ultimate hits a couple of shots. I think he hits 2 shots here, doesn't he? There's one. No, he hits 1 shot, but he hits it through the wall. And his teammate, I believe it's Naf, is up ahead. And what goes wrong for him? xFloud jumps up. Naf gets the initial kill. He just struggles to get away. I mean, maybe he could have run and jumped away, but at the same time, if you do that and someone peeks you from mid doors, you look like a total fucking idiot. So, I mean, you're not really going to criticize that situation. He gets 1. It would be nice if Nertz was here, though, a little earlier, maybe? Was Nertz just here? Was Nertz just here a little late? Like, wait, Nertz throws a flash for them to peek to begin with, right? Nertz is looking. This honestly feels really odd. This feels like a mid-round call, I guess, that they're not like used to. But it looks like Nertz is kind of like not sure what he should be doing there, right? He's like looking back both directions. My expectation would have been that Nertz threw the initial flash for them to peek out, which would just be, you know, it's obviously a flash from B is nice because you can get like a pure pop flash, whereas like Ultimate has to bounce a flash or throw it over the corner or whatever, and it can be a little bit less effective. You have Twist, nice little position, almost picks up 2. That would have been a fucking insane round. But then you end up with Nertz in the 1v2. And actually, this isn't completely unwinnable either. Jumps up on the boxes. LNZ should be ready for this, but the jiggle actually almost gets him killed. Yeah, that was actually well played by Nertz. Honestly winnable, but just doesn't manage to convert. Not going to win those every single time. And then you end up in the second half, which is where I've seen a lot of people be critical of Liquid. The way Twist is calling. I mean, to be honest, I'm really not sold on Twist's calling quite yet. I feel like his individual level has gone down since he started calling quite significantly. I would rather have a worse player calling and Twist's play at a higher level. By far, I would prefer that. I just don't think, I mean, I think it's going to take some time for Twist to call at like a top, at a very, very high level. I think it's going to take a little bit of time. And, you know, Rifler's peaks don't last forever, right? He's playing at a really insane level. Is that going to keep going forever? I would rather gamble on a lower fragging IGL to replace someone like, honestly, like JKS, even though I do quite like JKS. Anyways, Pissaron comes out. They go for that play in towards mid. Ultimate, Ultimate needs to be getting that kill. I mean, that's exactly what you're hoping for in that situation, right? Ultimate's holding, but your true hope in this situation is that someone walks out long and doesn't clear you, which is exactly what happens. Youngster walks out long, doesn't clear ultimate, but ultimate just doesn't get the kill. Then you have Youngster make his way back over. Well played by Youngster to actually make his way back over and make some impact, actually get contact. And ultimate does actually pick up 2 kills. So you end up in a 2v3 now. Ultimate definitely making up for the whiff, making up for not getting that initial kill as it turns into a 1v1. Picks up 3. Bomb plant here would be pretty key, but Naf's just not ready for the exact play Tanir's in. Was Tanir even known? Did they, like, it looks like Tanir might have just had time. Yeah, Tanir made contact a while earlier, so Tanir easily could be deep CT. Tanir could easily be short. And Naf just loses track of where he actually is, ends up getting killed. I mean, that's reasonable. The thing is, when I look at Liquid, they're 3-8. They have a 30-something, like a 31% pistol round win rate. And to me, that's something that's going to get fixed over time. So if they're losing close games and they're winning both, or they're losing both pistols in those close games, then they're probably doing something kind of right on their gun rounds. Like maybe they should be able to find ways to win those games a little more often. But at the same time, if you, in my opinion, and this could be controversial or not, if you lose both pistols, but you lose the game like 13-11, you were probably the better team when it came to actual gun rounds. The problem is, based on this game, I'm not sure I'm willing to say that Liquid was the better team when it came to actual gun rounds. Ultimate is hitting some fucking crazy shots though. Because, I mean, they did win pistol. They lost round 2, won round 3, lost round 4, won round 5. I mean, they kind of came out of that Force by Wars with the advantage, I feel like. I feel like they were the first team to win back-to-back rounds generally is the team that came out of the Force by Wars with the advantage. And that was Liquid in the first half, even though there was a bit of trading in terms of rounds. But still, 8-6 now for Heroic. Sunpie is in a decent position, but just can't pick up the kill, and Nerds clears them pretty well. And this is the problem that you're going to have. So if we remember back to like round 3 from Liquid, where they actually canceled, they aborted the players peeking off of short. This is what happens if things start to go wrong and you don't abort that peek off of short. It can lead to you losing an M4 in a situation like that, and the M4 just being retrievable, and that becomes a very winnable round. Although if they had 2 on short, I feel like that probably wouldn't have happened. And thinking back on that third round, I feel like maybe the point is Liquid just still have to commit to swing off of short, even if things were going wrong a little bit in middle, especially because you're fighting against Glocks in that situation. But in any case, Hero go for the double reaggress into tunnels, and Liquid are just holding, just waiting for this type of play. The timing is unbelievable because the moment Nertz looks away is the moment that Youngster is actually walking into tunnels, but the timing isn't good enough. I mean, in this situation, it's not sufficient early for the rotate to actually get here, so you still have to rely on LNZ hitting some shots, and he does. I mean, the molly from Nertz feels good. It's just, it's a CT molly. If that's a T molly, I think that actually pushes LNG all the way into the open and he ends up dying. But because it's a CT molly, it's a little bit smaller, and because it's a little bit smaller, LNZ managed to survive. And I mean, LNZ just makes a good individual play there. I don't want to be like critical of like individual like mechanical problems, right? Like maybe Liquid could have killed him a little bit faster, but I mean, that's, you know, it is what it is. Liquid generally are going to be winning those types of engagements when it comes to, you know, if it comes down to aim and mechanics, Liquid should be winning the majority of these games, right? Or the majority of these fights. So first real gun round, you have Sunpius, does get spotted out on short with the op, so Liquid have a decent amount of information off of that. You do actually have the op in the hands of Ultimate as well, going for this plant towards mid. I do like the play where sometimes you can do this with no smoke in mid. You crouch, and then you uncrouch into the angle, and you can actually catch a lot of operas off guard, although that's kind of a gimmicky play that you make when you're getting a little bit desperate, because it can also go terribly wrong, but it does work sometimes. Xplod just playing for the counter utility, which I quite like. That means that, I mean, that means that if Liquid were setting up for an A take and they wanted to use that molly with 4 players behind this, that they would have wasted a whole bunch of time. But this is why you do this type of play, where Nertz throws that molly and he isn't immediately actually, he doesn't need to take that control immediately, and he's kind of on his own here, because if you get counter utility and, you know, you get delayed, it's not the end of the world, right? You're prompting your opponents to be a little less ready to throw counter utility. And here, Twist is actually going to pick himself up a nice kill, ready for that counter flash coming out of Heroic, and you end up in a 4v or 5v4 with short control, with a player out mid, with B-Tons control. You're actually in a really good position here if you're Liquid. They just need to find a way to actually entry into the bomb site. Oi, Tanier just YOLOs out the window and immediately kills Twist. That is something. Okay, let me watch this again from Twist POV. So Twist is walking up. Twist is probably calling Nertz back because Nertz just threw a bit of a fake towards A. Probably calling Nertz over to mid. And Tanier just walks out and fucking destroys him. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you could argue maybe Nertz should have been with Twists here. If they actually wanted to go for a B split, why not have Nertz back up off of short? Is he really throwing them? I mean, all he did was shoot a couple of bullets. Was that really a net positive as opposed to having a second player out middle or a fourth player in tunnels? I don't know. But it ends up Tanier, not only does Tanier peek out mid and kill Twist, but by killing Twist, he actually gets the information that mid is empty. So then they can full focus on this side because Tanier like does this wild ass play. The problem is that like, look, if Twist just gets this kill in Tanier, then this round, you never even consider should Nertz even be there. It never even ends up mattering. I feel like it would be nice if Nertz was there to protect against that though. Because if Nertz is there, he just trades and the round's over as well, because they already had a kill in the rotate. But at the same time, if we actually think about it, they already had a kill in the rotate, which means they were expecting probably only one player towards B, which means they might have just felt like, okay, if there's only one other player towards B, if we can just keep them with 3 on A, then we're just going to win this round for free. But whatever. Then you're getting into kind of like mentality that you can't possibly know. But Tanier ends up dying to the molly. Naf takes down Youngster, and you end up in a 1v2. Not the easiest situation because there's not a lot of time on the clock, but because Heroic are also lit, this is actually very much winnable. And, you know, 1v2 B site after plant is one of the, you know, more winnable after plants. You have LNZ actually sacrifice himself, 16 health, runs in first. Naf just doesn't have enough ammo, but he still finds the kill. Okay, that was, I mean, I feel like Sun Pius kind of whiffed on Naf, and Naf kind of whiffed on Sun Pius, but Naf comes out on top. Again, when it comes down to it, Liquid have so much individual talent, you should be expecting them, if they can pick up rounds like that where they just win a 1v2, you're expecting that they should have a much easier time if they're on the same level strategically. Question is, are they? So the problem with winning a 1v2 is you end up in this situation here where you don't have a ton of utility on the Liquid side. I mean, JKS is missing some, Ultimate and Twist are both missing some, and then you end up having Naf move into lower tunnels, and what you generally want to do is you want to throw this flash that, you know, you've probably seen a million times now where you bounce it off of here, and it just drops down, it's going to blind players on short. I think this play from Sun Pius might be designed to dodge that flash, but you're going to have Naf, who probably wants to hold on to a bit of utility because his team doesn't have a ton of utility. And also you have to be careful because if you throw that type of flash, if someone's here, they can kind of swing on you as you throw that flash. Usually you throw that flash when you have a second player with you. So he's, you know, it's a bit of a risky situation going in alone, ends up getting punished for it. So now you have a 4v5. And you do have the re-aggression. Man, Ultimate's like better with a deagle than he is with a fucking rifle. And he is with an AWP. My God. It's like half his kills this game have been on the deagle. So he picks up a nice kill. I mean, obviously shouldn't be jumping around the corner like that. Understandably, you don't expect a third player on short, but at the same time, you still should expect a third player on short. But I mean, that's like one of those things that's like a small individual error that you like don't really focus on too much because it doesn't really end up, I think, you know, he knows he made that mistake. He knows he fucked up. I'm sure, and it just happens. I mean, those types of like brain farts where you're like, oh well, I killed the 2 players on short. There's, you know, I'll grab the gun. Oh yeah, there could be a third player on short. That just kind of happens once in a while to everyone, I think. Fast play from Nertz to get out long. They do have a flash, but the CTs aren't flashed at all. Okay, is there usually more than one flash when players do that swing out like that? So I actually find this really interesting. So first of all, Liquid, I think this is just a missed smoke. Now, this could be a personal preference, but you'll notice that the time that this lands, it takes 10 seconds to land. If we look at when Nertz died there, he dies at 146 is when they re-peek into him, right? 146, 147, like as it turns over. And if you look at the way most teams, pretty much every team throws this smoke, it lands in 7 seconds instead of 10, right? And so if we look at, basically, I think they're just straight up missing this smoke. I didn't realize while recording this was actually an eco, so they were probably just going for a play they normally don't go for, and they just opted to throw the smoke. But this smoke actually, I think, is just worse, because there's even a Nard Out Here video where he shows a smoke that lands in the same spot but faster. But also, they throw some weird flashes. So if we look at Team Liquid on T side, these are the flashes they throw. So they throw this flash, which is like a normal one. They throw these high left, which are normal. And they throw these. All right, here's how Na'Vi throw their flashes. They mostly throw them that land like here. And that seems like a small thing, but when they land out here, a lot of the time they can land behind this player if he's close to the corner. And as we saw, it's easier to dodge for that player. I think it's actually quite a bit easier to dodge. When Na'Vi run this play, here's some rounds they run this play. You can see Alexi B going out. In this case, they did it without a smoke, but if you look at a round where Na'Vi do this with a smoke, the smoke generally lands before the player is out. Plus you have a couple of flashes, plus Alexi B throws his own flash. Now, not every team has to run the same strat in the same way, but I think the smoke landing earlier is pretty key, and 2 flashes for that player so that this player, look, if you look at how Snow peeks out to throw, Snow peeks out and he's immediately blind because you know the timing the first player hits that corner, right? You basically know that timing. I don't know. It could be a preference thing, and they're only flashing once, and the flash is landing a little tiny bit late and really deep for this type of play. I don't know, this is just weird to me. Anyways, back to the game. That just ends up with Nerds dying. I mean, actually, I did all this research, and that was an eco. They only had pistols. Why did I not realize they were ecoing? It doesn't matter nearly as much. But at the same time, I mean, they throw that smoke the whole half like that, so it's a little odd. And whatever. You know what? Whatever. Okay, they're just going to lose this round. Understandable. 11-7. I think they lose this game 13-8. So we'll see how that one breaks down. But they don't go for the long play this time around. I mean, if you don't have the threat of the long play, it makes it a little more comfortable for the CTs, but maybe that's not the end of the world. Why do they love the MP7 so much? Can someone tell me this? Why does Liquid love... I mean, look, the MP7 is better than the MP5, but it's not as good as the Mac 10. I mean, the Mac 10 is still better. But anyways, they go for this setup play. Nerds is looking over the smoke, doesn't quite catch Naf. So Naf actually does get out, and I think Nerds, or Sunpius rather, is just gonna hit it. I mean, that's just a really solid shot. Like, that's not a shot you're hitting every time. Liquid do get a kill back on the other side, so they end up 4v4, and mid isn't smoked off, actually. Do they not have a smoke? They do have a smoke. They just decide to regroup and go out upper tunnels with all 4. I actually think that's a really cool mid-round read. A mid-round call, because you know the Opera is alone. He has to deal with players on both sides, and if you just overwhelm him with 4 players, he's not going to be able to get more than 1. Whereas sometimes he can do something like he can pick off both players on one side and then abandon the site, and he can end up in a reasonably good situation. So it's pretty much understandable. I actually really like that call, to be honest. You end up in a 3v3. XFlow knows where one player is, but the question is, are they going to go for this? They don't have a lot of money. They actually just find a really good timing, and they have a bit of utility to retake with, right? So you have this LNZ's worried about mid, so it's actually just 2 players. Tanir has a smoke for tunnels though. XCloud, he's just gonna pop in at just a really good timing. Drops the Tech 9. Twist is like worried about a bunch of different things, so he's not watching it at the exact right moment. Denier comes in through window, Twist kills him. Okay, so I was thinking Liquid are actually going to lose that round. That's about how a retake like that should go. Even if something goes well for the CTs on the retake, they still shouldn't generally be winning. There's the smoke from Twist. It goes around the corner, dude. I mean, look, I think that's a personal preference thing, actually. I can see why you might like the way that smoke lands, but that does affect the way you can play the rest of your game. And maybe Liquid, yeah, I can see Liquid actually, they don't go for the fast play around out long. Maybe but I mean, if they're going to go for that fast play with pistols, they probably should be doing it when, like, probably should adjust the way they throw they should probably throw that smoke slightly differently on rounds that they're planning on doing that, even though that's a bit of a tell. I mean, otherwise you're giving away potentially a free kill, right? Which is probably worse than just a tell. But I don't know. I mean, I'm sure someone's gonna watch that and be like, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Anyways, I like this little play here. I mean, it's a little uncomfortable. JKS takes 80 damage from a molly, so getting in the trade is really, really, really easy. But they do have this play up short. Nurse is gonna make his way out. The spacing is a little wide, but I mean, that's like really nitpicking. And a lot of the time, you're just not going to be able to trade in those types of situations. Sunpius hits a really quick shot. I mean, to some extent, like, you can't prepare around the fact that your opponents can always hit really nice shots and just, you know, kind of lock you out of rounds if they do. I like this double drop. They go for the clear because they know, well, we're getting... We're going to get trapped from long and short. So I have to, you have to push out and do something. In this case, they push in towards CT. Actually works really well, but then they just lose the rest of the duels. I mean, I actually feel like Liquid are making some really nice mid-round adjustments in calls that they're making in these mid-rounds. Like, I really think this drop into CT is smart. It gets them the kill. They end up in a 3v3. Naf is just wider out. But some of the plays they're making, it just feels like they're on different pages to some extent. So Naf doesn't drop. Naf doesn't go as deep down, which is fine. They don't have a flash for anything, so it's also fine. But nobody's really watching short. I mean, Twist is trying to watch short, but I think Naf is expecting that Ultimate's looking short, which is reasonable, but Ultimate's not looking short, so he just gets shot in the side. I mean, maybe it's fine either way. Maybe it's fine even without Ultimate looking short, but it just leaves that opportunity for something to go wrong. It's reasonable, actually. I think it's reasonable. It's just, maybe if Ultimate pivots to look short at the same time, maybe that makes it a little bit more effective. Or if Naf just waits half a second, right? If Naf just holds this angle like this for a quarter of a second, and then Twist gets to here, then Naf can go for this peak completely safely, right? It's just that small timing between them that just doesn't work out quite the way it could. And if it was like literally half a second better, or like Naf was half a second more delayed, or Twist was half a second faster, then they actually end up in a situation where Twist is able to hold that angle before Naf gets killed, and Naf gets the kill on long and just gets out long, and they end up in a perfect situation. So it does feel like a lot of these are kind of micro problems, like just small problems a lot of the time between two players. I think these could honestly get solved, because you notice Nertz is involved in a lot of these odd situations where it's just like he's like not sure what he should be doing. Sometimes it feels like he's like maybe falling back when his team looks like they want to be pushing forward, or he's pushing forward when it feels like his team wants to be pushing back. When the new player is the one doing that, and the last round isn't an example of that, obviously, but when the new player is the one doing that, that's completely reasonable. Final round of the game, not in love with the way that round went, but I mean, xFloud also did hit a couple nice shots, but I'm writing that round off. Pretend I didn't even analyze it. Great game. Why does Liquid suck at Dust2? I think the Nertz edition hasn't really had a chance to help them. I'm not a huge fan of some of their CT setups. T-side, I think their mid rounds are great, but their early rounds, some of them are a little odd. But I mean, I'm not watching hundreds of games of Dust2 like I'm sure their coaching staff is, so I'm sure they have a better idea of what they're doing than I do. But that's just my read. That's why you're watching my fucking video, okay? Why do I need to give all these clarifications, okay? I'm not on Liquid, but that's my read of the situation.